Raise Your Spirits Theater began in the summer of 2001 during a bloody intifada. The terror had claimed lives on our roads in Gush Etzion as elsewhere, and we were heartbroken. As we tried to come up with ideas to raise our spirits, a woman in Efrat, Sharon Katz, sent out an email. We're putting on a show and it's going to be spectacular. She told us later that she was inspired by the post-Depression era films of Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. I offered to direct. I had directed my first play at 11 and continued through high school and college, but when I was growing up, there were no comfortable opportunities for a religious girl in professional theater. So I integrated my love of theater into my teaching. And among the students I had taught were children in Sfat who had survived the terror attack in Ma'alot. A local beloved dance teacher in Efrat, Arlene Chertov, offered to choreograph. Sharon produced the show, sending out encouraging emails to the cast and crew. And 100 more women came on board as actresses, singers, dancers, creators of scenery, props, and costumes. We did it women to women, as there were women in our community who, for religious reasons, did not perform in front of men. And this finally gave them a creative outlet and a voice. So while others stayed home, glued to the morbid nightly news, we danced and sang our way across the stage of Gush Etzion. We chose to do Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, since it was biblical and we were living, after all, in the biblical heartland. As it happened, it had also been my personal dream to direct Joseph from the age of 24 when I first heard the soundtrack. As time went on, we discovered just how many personal women's dreams dovetailed with our communal dreams. For the first 9 years, we called ourselves whimsically the Raise Your Spirit Summer Stock Company, because we expected to do only 2 performances at the end of that first summer. But as time went on, we had to keep renewing the performing license we had from England, because women kept coming and coming from all over Israel on bulletproof buses, begging for tickets. The press also kept coming, wondering, who are these women who stare terror in the face and refuse to surrender? We had made a decision, Sharon and Arlene and I, in the early stages of our project, that we would never cancel rehearsals or performances on the day of a terror attack. This was not an easy policy. Some women in our cast had close calls, and one young lady lost one of her closest friends in the Sbarro attack in Jerusalem. She wanted to drop out of the show. After 2 weeks, I went to her house and said to her, "You've mourned. Now do it for her. Do it in memory of your friend. Do it in her honor." And then our second performance fell on 9/11. Our resolve notwithstanding, a few outsiders thought we should cancel. We consulted with a local rabbi who said, "Open the show with the reciting of Psalms, Tehillim." So while Sharon and others gathered books of Psalms from the local synagogue to hand out to the audience, I gathered the cast together and told them the following story. Only a month ago, I learned from a distant cousin that we had relatives who perished at Theresienstadt. They may have been theater people. They performed during the Shoah. Well, this is in Theresienstadt, and we're not in the Shoah, and we're going on. That was the night we began the custom of ending every show with the singing of Hatikva and Ani Ma'amin, I believe. We have kept that custom to this day. Women who attended that performance tell us it was one of the most inspiring, ones they ever came to. How could it not be? The world was going mad outside, and on stage, Joseph was singing of his desire for a land of his own. The response to our little troupe was so electric that we decided to keep on going and began to write our own biblical musicals about Esther, who saved her people, Noah and his family, who survived the flood to start a new world, Ruth and Naomi, women of faith and kindness, Deborah, who was a powerful judge, prophet, and military leader, Abraham and Sarah, who revealed one God to the world, and the 5 great daughters of Zelophehad, who came before Moses and said, "Why should our father's name be erased within his family because he had no son? Give us then a portion in the land among our father's brethren." We call the show, so fitting for our group, Sisters. We study for a year or more as we write a show, sometimes much more, usually collaboratively, often while learning with renowned female Torah scholars. We explore midrash and commentaries. Our goal is to be faithful to the sources and to these characters while bringing them alive on stage, making them relatable and human. We've had 5 different lyricists and 4 composers. You can read all the credits on our website, raiseyourspirits.org. And I believe we are fulfilling the prophecy from Zion will go forth Torah. For our shows have been performed before more than 50,000 people, not only in Israel, but in the United States and Canada, where they are licensed by schools and synagogues and camps. One was even performed in Mumbai by a man who did theater with street children. In Israel, we didn't remain in Gush Etzion. We performed in Jerusalem, Ra'anana, Rehovot, Kiryat Arba, Kdumim, and twice in Gush Katif, where our actresses were told by soldiers to duck, just to be on the safe side, as our bulletproof bus passed through the roadblock and along the dangerous Kisufim highway. We performed before both Orthodox and secular female MKs in the Knesset, where Yael Dayan became one of our fans. Our younger girls performed on TV shows and in the International Bible Quiz, and we were featured in 4 books and in academic papers. But most important, behind the scenes, we became a sisterhood, a multi-generational sisterhood ranging in age from 4 to 70 plus. We sometimes have actresses on stage who are from 3 generations of the same family who suddenly bond in a new way. We accept girls into our shows who have learning disabilities, ADHD, social issues. We have one who is deaf, but who learned to dance in perfect rhythm. It gives me a special thrill to see girls and teens blossom and grow as they overcome their self-consciousness, their shyness, and gain self-confidence on stage. We include women in our casts who have endured personal trauma and tragedy. In 2003, the son of actress Cheryl Mandel fell in battle fighting terrorists. She got up from Shiva and spoke from the stage about faith and the need to go on. That same year, an award-winning documentary was made about our troupe called Singing Through Our Tears. We have cast members who have battled serious illnesses in the course of a show season. I produced and directed a revival of Ruth this year, in between chemotherapy treatments for breast cancer. And I felt all the love and support I'd given our actresses over the last 16 years come flooding back to me. We share this kindness with others who need it, hosting family members of victims of terror and of soldiers who fell in battle as our guests. We discreetly put aside tickets for women in difficult financial straits and for women in shelters. Yet all this is while our goal is to put on a great show, and most of the audience is totally unaware of it. We've also been fortunate to have in our casts professional performers with fascinating stories, some who changed their lifestyles, who became religious and were seeking a creative framework, women who studied at the Broadway Dance Center, former opera singers from America, Spain, and French Morocco, a choreographer who as an infant was carried on her mother's back across Ethiopia, and another from Italy who went through the process of converting to Judaism throughout the rehearsal season. We've helped women who began as amateurs jumpstart careers in the performing arts. One of my greatest joys is seeing them move on from our mothership to new projects, especially those that can provide them with a livelihood. This year alone, 3 women who are actresses in Raise Your Spirits directed shows in Jerusalem. Others are performing in educational films and in high-level choirs. The skills and confidence that they gained on our stage is one of the factors that has propelled them forward. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. In 2007, we found ourselves in deep financial crisis. We had donated more than $100,000 to charity from ticket sales, mostly to victims of terror, feeling confident that a foundation that had funded our original music, the largest single expense, would continue to do so. When they were not able to, we almost shut down. We needed a creative solution. So one of our actresses, Yael Vallier, and I put our heads together and wrote a review show consisting mostly of songs we already had in our repertoire. But we asked ourselves, how did these biblical characters overcome adversity? And we began to dig deeper and wrote monologues and dialogues connecting the biblical characters throughout the ages, who discussed with each other how they coped with hardships. We called it In Search of Courage. I produced and directed with Yael's help, and that kept Raise Your Spirits on life support till we could get back on our feet again. But as those who work in the arts know, the financial struggle never ends. In the spring of 2014, I came to my colleagues in Raise Your Spirits with a new dream. I suggested we create a joint bilingual venture with a diverse cast of women in the Nahal Sorek area, not far from Rehovot. When my colleagues thought the logistics too daunting, I began to speak privately to Dati Leumi, religious nationalist, and Haredi women in Yad Binyamin, and to women in the transplanted Gush Katif communities in Ganei Tal and Netzer Chazani, and in the secular kibbutz Revadim, until a friend from Yad Binyamin said, why don't you start closer to home? So while that dream is still in the works, in 2015, coincidentally, just as I began reaching out, others began reaching out to us. And we began the process of including in our Raise Your Spirits casts actresses from the more secular communities of Mate Yehuda, about 20 minutes away from us, but inside the so-called Green Line. And from the Haredi, ultra-Orthodox town of Beitar Elite, we're spanning the religious, political, and geographical spectrum, expanding our tent. Theater troupes in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Beersheba have always had eclectic casts, but we are doing this in Gush Etzion, in the Etzion block, in an area some outsiders think of as insular, but an area that is truly open-hearted. We are uniting women who share 3 great loves: the love of musical theater, the love and emulation of inspiring biblical personalities, and most important, a deep love and respect for each other. For as the 12 tribes sing in our show Sisters, like a sea of eagles, like a wave of sheep, like a train of camels crossing mountains steep, like the stars on high, like the sand below. Each of us is separate, yet we're not alone.